Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our workshop entitled How to Pay for Long-Term Care Without Going Broke. We are very happy that you've decided to join us today and learn more about this exclusive information and resources that will give you a deeper understanding of us and our services here at Clinkscales. My name is Emily, and I'm the Marketing Director for Clinkscales Elder Law Practice in our main office here in Hayes. We also have our office in Wichita, and we serve families throughout the entire state of Kansas. I would like to invite you all to type any questions that you may have in the chat box that's located at the bottom of your screen. And then at the end of Randy's presentation, we will go ahead and address any and all of your questions. Now, without any further ado, I would like to hand it over to Mr. Randy Clinkscales to get us started.
Thank you, Emily. Folks, technology is wonderful till it's not. Today, I am going to be talking with you about how to pay for long-term care. And we're going to really kind of hit about three major areas as we go along. As Emily said, if you have questions, if you would just type it into the chat box, and then at the end, I will try to address those as best I can. Let's get started here. I'm going just, if you don't mind, would you type into the chat box, yes, if you can hear us okay, and no if you cannot, or if you're having any kind of problems, just if you put it into the chat box. Look, looks like everybody's doing good. Okay. Today you're going to discover the ways to pay for care, how to protect your spouse, how to preserve and protect a business or investment, and stay at home. Before I go on, I just did a presentation about 2 hours ago about how important it is to get some kind of plan in place. And so it's important that you understand that if you don't get some kind of plan in place, there is a mechanism that will decide it for you. It's called the government and the laws. And so we really want you to take some action to get some type of plan in place so that you're deciding versus letting the government decide for you. And so this is for you if you're concerned about losing everything to long-term care cost, if you're wondering how to pay for long-term care if it's necessary, if you're wanting to be sure your spouse is protected, and wanting to pass a business or property on to your family, and you're wanting to stay at home. I will tell you this is probably our most well-attended workshop. It is a topic that is a concern that all of us share. I don't care, whether what's your station in life. It is an important topic and a topic of concern. When I meet with a client, one of the things I talk about is what are their goals, or if they could wave a magic wand, what would they want to have happen? And these are common ones. Probably the most important one after we talk for a while is they want to stay at home as they age. They want to be able to pay for care without the worry of losing everything. And so many people wring their hands over that and worry about how to get that done and where's the money going to come from. They want to protect their property for their spouse, children, or others, and knowing that your spouse will be protected even if you need Medicaid. I want to share just a letter that I got the other day from one of our clients. It says, "My dad would have lost everything financially had it not been for Randy and his team using their expertise to divert what Randy termed the approaching train wreck. What Randy did for our family was create a life care plan for my mom, with a goal of keeping her safe and protecting as many of their assets as he could. We used their social services expertise, legal services, and all the other services that came with the plan. This was an investment that my dad and my sisters and I shared. Had we not done it, I am convinced my father would not have had his house and the small farm he grew up on. The plan paid for itself 100 times over. If you're an individual wondering how you will one day respectfully care for your aging parents, consider checking into this law firm. So who am I? I'm an attorney, and Emily put in this picture of a monkey. I don't know what that says about me or her. I'm an attorney with offices in Hayes and Wichita, and we have clients, as Emily said, throughout the state. I'm an elder care attorney. My focus is on working with people with chronic aging and chronic care issues and protection of their assets from long-term care. So sometimes our clients come to us with aging or chronic care issues. Other times they're just being more proactive. I've been practicing for over 40 years, but the last 17 years have really been the best as I've really focused on the above topics. I have 3 kids, 3 sons and 2 grandkids. My wife, that's my wife in the middle. I got to take care of the 2 grandkids for about 3 days this last weekend, and I'm still nursing a sore back. I understand why having children is reserved for young people, but I'm very proud of them. My son and my youngest son and wife and the 2 grandkids live in Wichita, and my middle son is a nurse, and my oldest son is the operations manager for a small company. Why am I so passionate? Because I do think this is important. And it was really is an outgrowth of taking care of my grandmother. I began taking care of her unexpectedly when she got sick, and then my mom died, who was taking care of her. And so in 2001, I began taking care of my grandmother. And a lot of our practice is really, built on that experience of my grandmother, of taking care of her. And what I learned along the way was that she wanted to stay independent. She wanted to stay out of the nursing home as long as possible. She wanted to protect her assets, really just to maintain the lifestyle that she wanted. And what I also learned that as a caregiver, even though I'm the lawyer, I didn't know everything, and I needed assistance as a caregiver to access appropriate services for my grandmother and go on this wonderful journey that I had with her through the aging process. One thing that I want to emphasize with you is that with our families, it's not about preparing just documents. It's about establishing a relationship with the families. It's not about a transaction. It is about a relationship. And I think that's one thing that really distinguishes our office. This is from a farming client. When his wife, he wrote me, he said, when my wife got sick and needed the nursing home, I was told I would have to sell my home and my farm. I thought I would go broke. Randy saved my farm for me and my children. And Mr. Woods is now gone, but we still represent his children, and they still have the farm. So long-term care does not have to devastate your finances or your family if we get planning done. So you're going to discover today how to plan for long-term care costs, how to pay for long-term care, and how to stay at home. So let's go to our first one, how to plan for long-term care cost. I want to emphasize that planning avoids crisis. Now, it doesn't mean you're never going to have a healthcare crisis, but we can plan the what if. What if that happens? What's going to happen next? But it does prevent us from having a legal crisis. Secondly, planning allows you to protect what's most important. You get to decide. The third point is planning allows you to stay in control. It really ties into the second one. We want you to plan how we're going to pay for care. What tools are we going to have? What are your priorities? What do you want to have happen versus somebody else telling you what's going to happen? So let's take an example. Mr. and Mrs. Jones came to us 65 and 62. They're still working. They own their home. They have 480 acres of ground. They have cash, retirement, and so forth of about $300,000 and relatively healthy. The farm has been in the family for generations, and they want to pass it on. They really want to protect their farm. But they know that long-term care costs are now $7,000 to $10,000 per month. In fact, we have a family in Wichita. Both of them are in the nursing home paying $21,000 a month for long-term care. And they know that if the Jones know if they needed nursing home care, they would use up all their cash and would have to sell the farm. So we designed a plan to protect the land from long-term care, as well as lawsuits and bankruptcy for themselves and their families. But it's important to start before there's a crisis. In this particular case, we put their farm into an irrevocable trust, and we're going to talk about more details about that in a moment. But the quote from them was, the investment was well worth protecting our assets from care costs of $7,000 a month. Another example is Mr. and Mrs. Schmidt. They recently retired. They're 72 and 70. Mr. Schmidt had $350,000 in an IRA, and Mrs. Schmidt had $200,000 in her retirement. They have investments of $300,000. They have a home, 3 children, and five grandchildren. They actually came to me about 6 years ago, and they had recently purchased a traditional long-term care insurance, but it was inadequate, it was expensive, and there was no guarantee that it wasn't going to go up annually, the cost. They're concerned if they get sick, their assets are going to be depleted. The policy is going to be depleted. It was a fairly short policy. It only paid about $3,500 a month. And they wanted to leave something to their children and their grandchildren, but more especially, they wanted their spouse to be protected. So we were able to find for them a special type of hybrid life insurance policy with long-term care rider. So specifically in this case, we took $150,000 out of one of their IRAs with a tax-free exchange, and we bought a $250,000 life insurance policy. That life insurance policy had almost 5 years of long-term care coverage that paid about $7,000 a month. If they had a claim on the long-term care policy, all it did is reduce the death benefit of the life insurance policy. Compare that with their traditional long-term care insurance. If they don't use it, they lose it. All the premiums they pay are gone. With the hybrid, there's no annual premiums. They have a really great chance of having a benefit for the family. And with the long-term care policy, with the long-term care rider on this life insurance policy, it provided that it would pay for home care. And it's kind of interesting because actually the Schmidt's family, their children made the appointment. And they were just really happy that their kids did, because it really took a lot of worry off their shoulder, gave them a lot of peace of mind. So if you're wondering about how do you plan to pay for care, and again, kind of go back what our topic was, how to plan for long-term care costs, then what you need to do is schedule a strategy session with our office, and we'll explore what options are available and acceptable to you. We'll design a plan on how to pay for long-term care, whether it's in your own residence or in some other setting. It is really important that we get essential documents in place, like powers of attorneys and a trust and so forth, whatever fits your particular circumstances. But that power of attorney is terribly important. And I don't have time to talk about it, but not all powers of attorneys are the same. So we want to talk to you about what types of powers we would recommend that you include in there. And then we'll start implementing a strategy right away to avoid roadblocks or changes in circumstances. So as an example, if your health can determine what options are available to us. Bad health may shut down some options. So even, let's kind of go back, even in the Schmidt's case, Mr. Schmidt did have some, I don't remember what it was, it was like pre-diabetic and some blood pressure issues. The hybrid policy was more affordable than his traditional long-term care policy because the underwriting is a lot different. But let's assume that it progressed into something more serious like dementia. Well, we probably couldn't have gotten that at all at that point. But notice that we were able to get a long-term care policy even with their ages in the 70s. Well, let's talk about the next one, how to pay for long-term care. So you make the decision on how to pay for care. You don't have to go broke if you need long-term care. And we're going to talk about some ways to pay for care using government benefits. So let's first talk about using planned resources to pay for care. So in this case, we're going to talk about the Johnsons, both in their 70s. This is a case where we had long-term care insurance in place. They also had elected into the Medicare system, which is pre-planning. And so in this particular case, Mr. Johnson had a stroke. He's in the hospital and he needs to be discharged. They've got an investment in business worth $500,000. And again, the long-term care insurance of $200 a day for 3 years. So that's not very, that's helpful. But as many of you know, a stroke can be a very long recovery process, but you can recover in some cases. They're concerned about how to pay for care and what happens when they use up the long-term care policy. And they would like to preserve something for each other and their children. So in this particular case, we are what we call care coordinator in our office. We have 2 social workers and 1 nurse, worked with Mrs. Johnson and the hospital to have Mr. Johnson transition to what's called a skilled facility and get qualified for Medicare to pay for his care. We then worked with the skilled facility to develop a plan for Mr. Johnson to come home. We tapped into the long-term care policy to make the home accessible for them, and also to cover some of the home care. So we weren't necessarily using the whole $200 a day, which has the effect of lengthening the policy. So the early involvement, and I really have to congratulate Mrs. Johnson, because calling our office did 4 things. It got the Medicare benefits extended. And again, we had to advocate a couple times when they wanted to terminate. We got the health improvement Mr. Johnson needed. And Mr. Johnson was able to return home. And just to let you know, he is at home and doing well and doesn't need a lot of care at all. But also we extended the long-term care policy because we weren't using the whole $200 a day in a nursing home, and therefore we ended up protecting assets. And let's talk about another one using planned resources, or using resources to plan around possible care. This is the Lundgren family. Let me get, these are made up names. But Mr. Lundgren called us from the doctor's office. He was at a neurologist's office, and she told him that he told the family they need to contact us. The doctor had said that Mr. Lundgren has early cognitive decline. Mr. Lundgren was in his early 60s, or is still in his early 60s. This is a pretty new case. He's still a very active farmer and has capacity. He's very concerned about what happened if years from now he needs care, and he's concerned for his wife and his children. And his wife's also in her early 60s, and this really threw her for a loop. When I talked with him, he said, I want to stay in control, but I want to be sure my wife and my land are protected. So our solution is we set up broad powers of attorney. We put the land into an irrevocable trust. We added his care instructions to his health care power of attorney, and met with his agent so they know his wishes. The result was, though it may be several years before he ever needs health assistance, his goals are achieved through his plan that are set forth in his document. His land's protected. He remains in control and will continue to farm as long as he can. His wife has the power to further protect resources. His care goals are protected, taking pressure and guilt off his family. Then I want to conclude this segment with about crisis planning using Medicaid. Again, this is a fairly recent case. Mrs. Goforth has Lewy bodies dementia. She's been discharged to a nursing home from the hospital, paying $8,000 a month. The assets include Mr. Goforth's retirement of $300,000. They have a joint account of $60,000. Mr. Goforth has Social Security of $1,500, and Mrs. Goforth's Social Security is $800. They were told by the nursing home they would need to spend down all the resources before Medicaid would help. Mr. Goforth would need to use his income to help pay for her care, and Medicaid would put a lien on the home. Mr. Goforth was worried that his wife would not get good care if she went on Medicaid. So our solution in this case was we used some Medicaid tools and legal documents, and by doing so, we restructured their assets. We were able, you hear about a 5-year look back. There's an exception to that for transfers between spouses. There is no look back. That's not quite true, but basically there's no 5-year look back for transfers between spouses. As a result, we were able to qualify Mrs. Goforth for Medicaid. Mr. Goforth was able to keep all the assets, all his income, and Mrs. Goforth's income to support himself. The result was that Mr. Goforth was not forced to go broke. He has enough income to take care of himself, even though Mrs. Goforth is on Medicaid. There is no lien on the home, and he can sell it without losing it to Medicaid. He kept all of his retirement. Our office will be working with him to be sure that his wife's care is good or is appropriate, and that we can advocate for her, giving peace of mind to Mr. Goforth. I want to mention in this case, now, Mr. and Mrs. Goforth had too many resources, but if one of them had been in the military and their resources were at a lower level, sometimes we can qualify the family for what's called VA pension, which can pay up to $2,200 a month for care. Doesn't even have to be for care, just supplemental income for the family, and it's tax-free. And so we always ask our clients if they were wartime veterans and explore those VA benefits with them. This is a family that came to us quite a few years back. And here's the note from J.O. My father, Henry, and I met with this firm and decided to hire them. Best decisions of our life. They had great knowledge and helped us apply for funds that we had no clue were available. They are there anytime you need them and return calls quick and with answers. Over the years, I even became friends with a few of the staff. Great team to work with. And this was a family that we were able to tap into multiple sources to help pay for care. In fact, I think we ended up delaying ever having to go on Medicaid till the very, very end. So what do you need to do is schedule a strategy session as soon as possible. We want to explore all funding resources, private and public, with you. We want to get in place strong powers of attorneys and other estate planning documents so that we know what you want to have happen and who can act for you. Our goal is this: to find, get, and pay for good care without going broke. I really like this referral, or this thank you that I got from Pat. Pat came to us at a very, very difficult time in her life. They had actually lived out of state. Her husband got sick. They moved to Kansas to be closer to family. Her husband's care really spiraled. She was trying to do it all on her own. My recollection is we were able to get her some assistance in the home for a while, but then her husband had to transition to a nursing home. He had significant memory issues and behavior issues. And when she came to us, she was just kind of bitter, if you will, that in the twilight of their years that this card had been dealt them. We worked with Pat for several years with her husband, and she really became a sweetheart to me, just to see the transition as we were able to help her and give her peace of mind. And she wrote me this nice note. My husband needed nursing home care. You guided me through the process. Your care coordinators made sure my husband was getting good care. I highly recommend you because you're always there for your clients and will guide them through everything that goes on, things we never expected to go through. And I want to emphasize that for a moment. I visited with a client a couple of weeks ago, and I feel really bad. His wife has dementia. He's trying to take care of her at home. So far, he has not retained our office. And I'm so concerned about what he's going to go through. And I think he's got some pat in him. I can take care of this myself. But I know that what's going to happen is, and they don't have any children, I know what's going to happen is at some point, he's going to crash and burn. And then we're going to be struggling trying to help out his wife as well as him. So again, I wish that, and I'm hopeful that at some point we'll get to guide that family. So how to stay at home. And again, when I was working with my grandmother, this was the most important goal. There are options. It's not your home versus the nursing home. And what do I mean by that? There's a lot of things in between that we can do. But support for the caregiver, support and information for the caregiver is key. So I want to just take my personal example of my grandmother. When I took over her care, she was 86. She had had some heart issues in December. And then 2 months later, my mom passed away unexpectedly. And all of a sudden, that was the last child. And all of a sudden, I was a caregiver. She lived almost 600 miles from me. Her health, she had various health issues. She eventually went on hospice twice. She had very restricted resources and a home. But she wanted to live independently and alone. And the quote that I love from her is, quote, "Honey, I know someday I will have to go to a nursing home. I just don't want to know about it," close quote. And so as long as she was cognitive, she wanted to stay at home and in control. So I was taking care of her for 10 years. We were able to find some resources in the community, and she was able to stay in her residence for 6 years. After 6 years, after her second go around with hospice, I moved her from Fort Worth, Texas to Kansas to assisted living. She was there for 4 years. Only one assisted living facility would take her. We had to do a lot of advocacy along the way to keep her there because he kept wanting to kick her out because of how frail she was. But she became much more interactive. She began developing friends. She could get out and go to church and those types of things. Eventually, at age 96, she went into the nursing home for about 50 days when she passed away. But the point is, she was given 10 years of really independence. So the lesson here is with proper guidance, you can stay at home longer. The transitions can be gradual. The support for the caregiver is critical, and resources can be stretched to achieve those goals. So again, let me reemphasize with my grandmother. She was living independently, initially being cared for by my mother. After my mother died, we arranged for some family that would check on her, some cousins. We eventually kind of gravitated to some home health, which she was not very accepting of, but we gravitated to that. We went on hospice. Again, that was in her home. We eventually then moved to assisted living, where she actually did really, really well there. Again, not until the last 50 days was she required, or was it necessary for her to go into a nursing home. This is Sherry that came to us. Sherry and her husband were quite a bit, there's a disparity in age. Her husband developed Parkinson's, and Parkinson's is tough. She wrote me this note. My husband had Parkinson's. You helped me keep him at home as long as possible. You showed me how to be a better caregiver. I could not have figured out how to pay for care with Medicare and Medicaid on my own. And she goes on to say, I highly recommend Clinkscales Dental Law Practice. Sometimes families that are dealing with Parkinson's are really, really slow to see the evolution and the shifting of the burden to the caregiver. So it seems like we've got a lot of Parkinson's cases. We have a lot of dementia cases. About 70% of our clients in what we call life care planning have some form of dementia. So what do you need to do? Again, what's our topic here? How to stay at home. So what do you need to do? If you're facing aging or chronic illness issues, meet with us for a strategy session. Don't wait. The longer you wait, the greater the crisis and the more limited the options. And again, I'll go back to the gentleman that was here a week or two ago. I'm afraid he's going to come back either after he crashes or after it's such a crisis and that we're not going to be able to be as effective for him. But don't give up. There are solutions. And this is from a family, and it's not unusual that we have children that are remote from their parents. And so this is a kind note that this young lady wrote me. It says, thank you for all you did today. Being 7 hours from my parents, it gives me great peace knowing that you are taking care of their interest and welfare. Also, you have given my sisters a great deal of relief just knowing we don't have to wonder anymore. You did a remarkable job with my dad. I want to throw in one more here. Every year with our clients, we send out a how are we doing kind of a thing. And one of our clients wrote back that they wish our care coordinator, this particular care coordinator's name is Jill, would talk to my dad. He seems to listen to her better than he listens to us. And I think clients really appreciate that we're objective. We don't have a dog in the fight. We're there to give them our best advice. So far, you've discovered there are ways to plan for the possibility of long-term care costs, and the plan will protect your family, your spouse, and your assets. You can pay for long-term care with private resources, or if necessary, you can access public or government benefits, but you don't have to go broke. With proper care and planning, you can delay or avoid nursing home, allowing you to stay in your home longer. So I hope you get this one thing. With proper planning with an expert improves the opportunity and the likelihood to stay at home, to be sure you protect your family and to preserve your assets from the devastation of long-term care. So how do you make this happen? Again, we're talking about how to pay for care, long-term care without going broke. We have strategies for avoiding, planning, and paying for long-term care, and how to find, get, and pay for care without going broke. So how does this work? Emily is going to send you some contact information. We have a phone number you can call that you're interested in a consultation. First step is we're going to have a short phone call with our office to be sure that we can help you. And if we can, then we'll schedule a free 60 to 90-minute consultation in person or by Zoom or by telephone with me or one of my partners, Jenny Walters and Adam Deese. At that meeting, we will discuss your financial and legal needs should you require outside care, develop a chronic illness, or dementia. We'll review with you your current estate plan if you have one, and we want to establish long-term goals. If you're dealing with a chronic illness or aging issues, we'll help you develop a plan to keep you safe and in the least restrictive environment. And then we'll answer all your questions about your unique situation. And everybody's situation is unique. And I'm not saying that flippantly, it is. Everybody's goals are different. Everybody has different families. Everybody has different resources. But at the end of our time together, what you're going to have an analysis of your current plan. You'll have better clarity of your issues and your goals. We'll have a blueprint on how to achieve the goals. And then at the end, we'll know exactly what the investment is to achieve those goals. After that, you'll decide to get started. And then we'll draft a summary of your plan. We'll prepare the necessary legal documents that will be the framework of the plan to be signed by you at another meeting. We will meet again to sign the documents and then begin the process of putting the plan in place. So it's important that you understand this is not just about documents, it's about solutions. The next step, we'll then work together on other tools and steps, such as how to title property, what resources that we may want to explore, and the like. And if we're dealing with a chronic illness or aging issues that require assistance, we may have you meet with one of our care coordinators. Typically, we would charge $450 for this type of strategy session. But because you've attended this, we're going to do that free, but there's a catch. And the catch is that we've only got 8 spots available in the next 3 weeks for this free strategy session. So if you want the strategy session, call 877-325-8040 or click on the SurveyMonkey link in the follow-up email that Emily is going to send out. My personal guarantee is that after that strategy session, you're going to know more than you do today. You're going to have an analysis of what happens if you do nothing, and your time's not going to be wasted. So again, if you want to schedule the free strategy session, call the number 877-325-8040 or click on the SurveyMonkey link that Emily is going to send to you. We have a gift. If you sign up for the strategy session, you're going to get a copy of one of the books that I co-authored, Protect Your Family, Don't Write a Blank Check to the Nursing Home, and a written summary of our recommendations. So remember, you're going to get the free strategy session, an analysis of your current plan, a free written report, the free booklet, and then a surprise bonus that I just added here a couple of days ago, I have a booklet called A Consumer's Guide to Medicaid. We will also send you that for scheduling a strategy session. So before I turn it over to Emily, again, I encourage you to contact the office, and in that initial conversation, we can decide if we can help you or not. And then if we can, then we'll schedule a more formal sit-down meeting and a sit-down Zoom or whatever. So don't feel like your problem is too little or too big for us to at least explore with you. So Emily, I am going to turn this over to you and see if there are any questions that you have or that anyone has asked.
Perfect. We do have a question here about the strategy sessions. It's kind of a two-part. They want to know, can they come to our office if they've already worked with a different lawyer? And are the strategy sessions one-on-one or group settings?
That's a good question. I had never heard that group setting before, but apparently there are some firms that do that. No, this is a one-on-one session. And yes, you can come to us with, even if you've had another attorney. That's most common, that you have, a lot of people do have some type of estate plan. It's just that times have changed. You've changed, I've changed, the laws changed. And so again, that's our area of expertise. And so it's fine if you've previously used another attorney.
Okay, perfect. And then we do have one more question here. And this is kind of hard to answer probably because every situation is unique, but they want to know, when is it appropriate to refer someone to you for help? If they, for example, have $15,000 in assets, would this be someone to refer? And then kind of like, they wanted to know what the costs for services are, or somebody doesn't have enough money or assets. Is that still someone that we can help here at Clinkscales?
And yeah, so let's talk about, that's a good question, actually. Sometimes when people call for the strategy session and we do that initial interview, a lot of times we realize there may be a real easy solution that we can give you guidance on. Maybe it's just setting up your accounts a certain way. Maybe it's everything is fine. Maybe it's just us looking over what documents that you have. So I don't want to tell you there's a break point where if you've only got $15,000, we're not the attorney that can help you. But we can, our goal is anytime anybody calls our office, that if we cannot help them, we find someone who can. So don't be afraid to refer somebody, even in those situations, and we'll do what we can to either help them or find a home for them. Let's talk about the costs. The costs are really going to be the status of the situation and how complex it is. So I told you a moment ago about the gentleman that came in to see me with his wife has dementia. We're early in the process. And so by being early in the process, the cost, if you will, to retain our firm is much less than if he calls at a time when there's a crisis and we have to get stuff done tomorrow. And so the price can really vary based on what's going on. And so we really like to tell you it's an investment to help you protect and preserve resources, and can kind of give you an idea about how much we're actually protecting and saving you from. Any other ones, Emily?
Perfect. Yes, we do have one more that came in here. How long does Medicare pay for skilled nursing when someone goes in? If taking chemo for cancer, does Medicare pay for their nursing home while on chemo?
So the maximum that Medicare pays for in skilled care is 100 days. However, you will find, in one of the cases that I cited to you, you will find that there is a push to cut that down. And so sometimes you have to advocate for that. Let me tell you what I know about the cancer question. So typically, you still have the 100-day window for Medicare. So Medicare may not pay for the stay, but Medicare would pay for the treatment, if that makes sense. So even though your Medicare days are up, your Medicare policy and your supplemental policy may pay for the chemo beyond the 100 days. So if you have to stay in the home past the 100 days, Medicare is not going to pay for that skilled care, if that makes sense.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for addressing those questions, Randy.
Emily, let me add one other thing. I'll kind of go back to one of your questions about the meeting with us. One of the things that we do a little bit different is that, you know, if you feel like your financial advisor or your CPA or one of your children needs to be in the room in the meeting, we really encourage that. I always feel like the more ears that are in the room, the better understanding that not only do you have, but maybe even a better understanding that I have about the situation. And so don't feel like that only you and your spouse are welcome here. If there are other people that are important in the decision making, we welcome them to be in that meeting with us. Thank you, Emily.
Perfect. It doesn't look like we have any additional questions in the chat box right now at the moment, but please feel free to add your question now as we're going to go ahead and wrap up our presentation for this afternoon. I just want to kindly remind everyone that you will receive that follow-up email that Randy mentioned that will contain the important things. The email will include a recording of the session, and we provide that to you so you can share this with other family members, your friends, colleagues, anyone that wasn't able to make this session today, or so you can just go back through and take notes on the important topics that Randy covered. The second thing the email contains is a SurveyMonkey link that I'm also putting in the chat box right now. If you fill out that quick 2-minute survey, you will receive that completely free strategy session where you will speak with one of our attorneys about your unique situation. And I want to just reiterate that you can call our office at any time at the number located on the screen, the 877 number. If you have any questions regarding the free strategy session or any other questions, we're always happy to chat. Everyone should also have my email, which is Emily@Clinkscales Law. So if you have any questions and you'd prefer to talk via email, please feel free to chat that way as well. I would also invite you all to stay up to date on our upcoming events on our website. We have another session coming up actually next Wednesday, April 6th, entitled Strategies for Dealing with Dementia Diagnosis, also with Randy, where he will go over some exclusive information on the resources and ways that we can help people navigate and overcome the overwhelming journey with dementia. And so I'm going to go ahead and do one last call for questions here. Here's one that you kind of touched on earlier, Randy, but when do you feel is the best age to start this process?
Well, let me say this. I think you need to have an estate plan right now. Even Emily, okay? It's never too young to start the estate planning process. The discussion about long-term care and protecting assets or how to plan for that, we generally like for people to start thinking about that in their 50s, certainly in their 60s. However, I want you to know that we have probably 4 or 5 cases right now where we have families that one of the spouses developed dementia in their 40s. And so obviously I wish they would have started when they were 39. But again, it really is important to get estate plans in place really right now. And then, you know, we may not be ready to talk about long-term care insurance, but again, have that conversation with the attorney about what do you need to do, and when's the appropriate time, and what's available out there. And I think you just need to look at it globally. But to answer your question, do it now. Some type of estate plan, and then talk about you know, what's going on healthcare wise, what your goals are, what your resources are, what do you want to have happen.
Perfect.
Good question.
That was the last question that I see come up. So we are going to go ahead and finish up for the afternoon. And like I said, if you think of any questions later, or you have some unique situational questions that you'd like to talk with us about one-on-one, please call us, email us. We'll be very happy to chat with you. Please fill out that SurveyMonkey link, and we look forward to working with you soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.